Welcome to Everything Fear. Today, I look at my top 5 horror movies of the year 1985. Hello and welcome to Everything Fear, your one-stop shop for all things horror. I'm Kit Tinsley, I'm a horror author, film academic and general horror geek. If you enjoy this video, if you could please subscribe, give us a like and maybe tickle that bell icon to be notified when we upload future content, that would be great, thank you. As I say, today this is episode 8 in our series A Life in Horror. In this series I look at my top 5 horror movies of every year I've been alive. And today we look at the year 1985. Number 5. Return of the Living Dead. John A. Russo co-wrote Night of the Living Dead with George Romero. When the two parted company, Romero retained the rights to continue making movies within that universe, but Russo retained the rights to the Living Dead part of the title. He wrote a novel called The Return of the Living Dead as a separate sequel to the original Night of the Living Dead. This was completely separate to, of course, Romero's Dawn of the Dead. It was decided to make a movie from the novel, and Alien scriptwriter Dan O'Bannon was brought on board to polish the script. Tobe Hooper was supposed to direct, but pulled out in order to make the film Lifeforce, which we'll talk about very soon. After Hooper's departure, they asked O'Bannon to direct the movie. He agreed on the condition that he could do a complete rewrite of the script. The result is a masterful horror comedy that's cultural impact can't be ignored. This is the movie that created the idea that zombies eat brains rather than just flesh, and that they wander around going, brains. This has become such a common pop culture reference, even appearing in The Simpsons, that people don't even know where it came from, but it came from this movie. Number 4, Lifeforce. This British science fiction / horror movie is based on a 1976 novel by Colin Wilson called The Space Vampires. The movie was produced by Cannon and directed by Tobe Hooper. The title was changed to Lifeforce from The Space Vampires in order to make it sound less like a B-movie. The movie centres on astronauts finding an alien spacecraft in the tail of Halley's Comet. Inside the ship are 3 travellers in suspended animation. When they return to Earth, it becomes clear that these travellers are in fact psychic vampires, who suck the very life essence out of their victims, rather than their blood. Their arrival on Earth signals an apocalypse that has to be stopped. There are obvious similarities to Quatermass and The Pit, so Hooper decided to direct the movie as though it was a Hammer movie, in tribute to Quatermass. Though initially a box office flop and suffering poor critical response, the film gained a cult following, and after the original cut was restored, it's now considered to be an effective movie and one of the most intelligent vampire movies ever made. Number 3, Demons. This Italian horror movie was produced by one legend, Dario Argento, and directed by the son of another. The movie's director, Lamberto Bava, is the son of horror legend Mario Bava. Demons is an early example of a meta-horror film. Though postmodern horror would become hugely popular in the 90s thanks to films like Scream, it wasn't really a thing in the 80s, except for Demons was doing that a decade earlier. Demons really blurs the line between reality and fiction. The film focuses on a cinema audience watching a horror movie. That film within a film contains a mask that, when worn, allows demons to possess the wearer. The mask is real, and in the cinema where people are watching the film. Soon the demons are released into reality, and the audience is trapped in the cinema with them. There are some brilliant and disturbing special effects in this movie. It's actually the one movie that still really makes me feel uncomfortable when watching it. I can't really explain why, but there's just something about the look and the sound of the demons in this movie that really gets to me. I don't know why. It's just very unnerving. 2. Day of the Dead. George A. Romero had already reinvented the zombie movie in 1968 with Night of the Living Dead, and then built on that with 1978's masterpiece, Dawn of the Dead. Both of these movies had mixed gory zombie horror with clever satire. This was a trend that he wanted to continue in his third instalment. He stated that Night of the Living Dead was the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. Dawn of the Dead was mankind losing the battle. Day of the Dead is where humanity has lost the battle. A group of survivors made up of military and scientists are surviving by hiding out underground. The scientists are trying to understand the zombies, how they work, how they can be stopped, and whether there is a cure. The military, though, are angry and want to take control of the situation. Day of the Dead contains some of the most horrific special effects of the series, and it is definitely the bleakest movie in the series. Its message is really very clear. We, the humans, are the real monsters, and we will be the bringers of our own destruction. Number 1, Fright Night. Vampire movies had pretty much gone out of fashion by the early 80s. Bar Tobe Hooper's 1979 TV adaptation of the Stephen King novel Salem's Lot, there hadn't been any major vampire movies for a long time. In the landscape of early 80s horror cinema, the slasher was king, and the vampire was seen as kind of dated. The thing with the undead, though, is they keep coming back. Tom Holland had already gained a great reputation as a writer of horror movies with The Beast Within and Psycho 2. When he decided to make the transition to directing, he decided to use his script for a modern vampire movie. Fright Night eschewed the gothic settings that had become the norm for vampire movies, and set his film in a world where people thought vampires were just fiction. Fright Night was a new kind of vampire movie, making use of modern special effects to make the vampire even more monstrous. Mixing horror and humour in a way that had been proved successful in 1981 with John Landis's An American Werewolf in London, and how that had served to resurge the werewolf genre. A great cast, with special mention having to go to Chris Sarandon as the vampire Jerry Dandridge. A performance that mixed charm and danger perfectly. Also, Roddy McDowall as Peter Vincent, a Hammer-style movie star turned TV horror host who begrudgingly begins hunting vampires in real life. Fright Night revived the vampire movie and led the way for films such as Vamp, Near Dark and The Lost Boys that were all to follow very soon. Well, that was my personal top 5 horror movies of 1985. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, stay scared and stay tuned.